Hi, Mark here from the Tangent Bound Podcast Network and host of the flagship show, the Tangent Bound Podcast. Did you know that we over at Tangent Bound are always looking for amazing podcasts to promote? And did you also know that we are also proud nerds and geeks of everything from movies, music, gaming, TV shows, and comic books to wrestling, MMA, soccer, and football? Whatever you can nerd or geek out about, we've got it. And if you're interested, we can help you find it. And if you're a show looking for a place to call home, we've got you covered. Side effects may include upset stomach, dizziness, tumors, shakes, and in some rare cases, death from excessive laughter. Though to be fair, it's only sometimes. Other side effects may include diarrhea, gallstones, heart palpitations, and strong desire for cookies on the dark side. Talk to your doctor and visit TangentBoundNetwork.com and see if Tangent Bound Network is right for you.
Life sucks to the last drop. Are you gonna blow your head off? Take good aim and don't forget to duck. Life sucks every Monday and all the way to Sunday, but I wouldn't have it any other way. I don't care how you're doing, what's up or how's it hanging. I'd like to buy this world one last drink. Life sucks all of the time, so stick it up your sunshine, and then you'll see the clouds every day. And then you'll see the clouds every day. And then you'll see the clouds every day.
Hey everybody, welcome to a new episode of The Crazy Life. I'm Brian. Joining me as always, Henno.
Hola.
And yeah, we're back. Doing the thing, I
We're
guess.
back.
Yeah. In the saddle again?
I'm back in the saddle again.
Oh wow. I was going Aerosmith, you in a different way. That's what's always fun, right? Like, you know,
right?
you got different people and you know, a lot of songs have crossover lyrics or words in them, of course, you know, so you can take things and go totally different ways.
I mean, and look at the contrast there. You've got I'm back in the saddle again versus I'm back.
Yeah. Yeah, very stylistically different as well. I appreciate
the
this.
saddle again.
Careful.
Ugh.
You don't want to not be able to sing anymore.
I'm gonna blow out people's eardrums.
That too. Save it
Oh,
for your
I'm gonna-
gigs, man.
I'm gonna blow out some eardrums tonight, my man.
Oh, all right.
Oh yeah, I'm gonna drop some bombs.
Oh, shoot. Doing truth bombs here? Is that what
Oh
we're doing?
yeah,
hot takes?
hot honesty bombs.
Oh, man. I didn't know we were doing a hot takes episode.
Oh, it's gonna be a good one.
Oh, boy.
I told you I had a good story.
All right. Well, I guess I'll go first then, so I can just get out of your way because I don't want to get destroyed. And then I won't be able. No.
Yeah, you don't want to follow up my story.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. I'd
You
rather.
don't want to. Yeah.
I gotta be the curtain jerker instead.
Yeah. You'd be like the Black Sabbath to my Van Halen.
Wait a minute, which Van Halen? And which Black Sabbath? Okay, on Sabbath, I don't think it matters because either lineup, I'm like, all right, let's go. But Van Halen, it just depends.
I mean, we're talking what 79 or 78? That would have been the first one, either Van Halen 1 or 2, and the end of Ozzy's career, probably 77.
Well, the end of his
78?
Sabbath career.
His career.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah.
I was like, he did do all right on his own.
Just a little. Well,
Yeah.
you can make it. There's like this 6 degrees of separation thing I heard about how like if Ozzy hadn't have left Black Sabbath, so much metal would have been different.
Yeah, you know, I love. There was a podcast I listened to. I think it used to be called Wrestle Roast. They changed the name of it, but they did a couple episodes to where basically like they were talking just a little bit about, or maybe it wasn't them, I don't know, it was some podcast. They were talking in wrestling about that. Like if Hulk Hogan doesn't do this, then this doesn't happen, this doesn't happen, this doesn't, you know? And I love those. And now there's a sports podcast with a guy named Trey Wingo, used to be on ESPN. And they do that with sports about like a free agent going this place instead of this place and how it changed the market or it changed. And I'm like, oh, I love those things where you get just a little glimpse at like, what if they didn't do this though? Like this could have drastically altered. And yeah, like that with Ozzy would be so cool to see, you know, just to talk those out and just be like, yeah, this happened because of this and this happened because, you know, the butterfly effect basically, or the ripple, you know.
I mean, basically within 2 steps, you link Black Sabbath to Quiet Riot.
Really?
And if Quiet Riot doesn't happen the way it did, hair metal probably didn't happen in LA.
Oh, wow. That'd be weird.
Right? Because Randy Rhoads was in Quiet Riot.
Oh, shit. Yeah. Wow. Well, you know, and it's funny, too, because if you keep going forward, like, well, I mean, hair metal might have happened anyway, but if it wasn't for hair metal, the next step in like metal wouldn't have maybe happened because that was a direct rebellion to hair metal. And, you know, so, yeah, it'd be interesting to see how things might have changed a little bit there.
So, and what you're touching on is the fact that Dio wouldn't have been in Black Sabbath.
Right.
If Dio wouldn't have been in Black Sabbath, then Dio wouldn't have had the opportunities that he had, you know, Rainbow and then eventually his solo career, which took that kind of early hair metal and made it more European metal.
Right.
So like, I love that.
That's
stuff.
really cool. Yeah, me too. I wish there was more of it out there because it's fun to really sit and think about, you know, and like, even like when I hear wrestlers tell stories about how, you know, just right place, right time type stuff. Right. Yeah. You know, like the guy Booker T, who's, you know, a well-known wrestler. He was a tag team with his brother. They were called Harlem Heat in WCW. And his brother went for a tryout somewhere, and he went with him. And the promoter was like, "Who's this guy?" And Stevie Ray was like, "Oh, that's my brother Booker." And he goes, "Are you guys a tag team?" And Booker wasn't there to wrestle, basically. And then they were like, "Oh yeah, totally," because they were just trying to, you know, like whatever it takes, right? Then they go on to be a very successful tag team. Booker goes on, has a great solo career. He's in the Hall of Fame for WWE. You know, it's like, so if he wasn't there that day, who knows if Harlem Heat would have ever happened, if Booker T would have ever had a career that way. You know, it's like just little stuff like that. Just one tweak. The Hogan one is the one that's always the most interesting one to me, you know, or like back in the day when, you know, there was a hit put out on Hogan and they wanted Iron Sheik to break Hogan's leg. And Iron Sheik decided to go play ball with Vince McMahon instead. And Iron Sheik was a legit wrestler. Like, he could have broken Hogan if he wanted to, you know, and he chose not to. He took the money and went with Vince instead. But it's like, what if he had taken that money and broken Hulk Hogan's leg? Hulkamania may have never happened. And without Hulkamania, wrestling may have hit the peak it ever did.
Yep.
You know, because Hulkamania, you know, went beyond wrestling. You know, So yeah, that's why I said I love when you think about this, or, you know, Hogan turning heel. That was originally the thinking was Sting in that role instead of Hogan, and, you know, it wouldn't have been the same with Sting. It just wouldn't have been, as much as, you know, Sting had always been a good guy. I was like, but Hogan was always the good guy, you know. So. And no moment in history, I think, has surprised wrestling fans more than that turn. You know, that's still one of the, if not the biggest moment, and, you know, kind of thing. So, yeah, I love hearing those. Or like you said, you know, if this guy goes to this band instead of this band, it drastically alters, or baseball or something, you know, it could, you know, this guy going here, maybe it didn't pan out, but because he went there, they signed this guy instead. And, you know, it's nuts how, just like I said, right place, right time sometimes makes such a massive ripple. You know, well, so that's a lot of fun.
With music and with sports, you know, when you have somebody hot coming from a certain area, then promoters or musical producers go look for others in that
Yep.
area, figuring that
True,
there's
yep.
magic there.
Yep,
And
you're
so
totally
that's
right.
why there's a whole other factor to that.
You see that a lot in rap, especially. I think is where I've noticed it the most, right? Like if some rapper comes out of, well, like Atlanta, right? Like you pull, like Outkast comes out of Atlanta, and all of a sudden it's like, whoa, there's some legit talent in Atlanta. We better go scout at Atlanta, you know. Now you got Ludacris and all these others that have come afterwards, you know. So yeah, it is that way. It's so funny in rap how you've seen it over the years to where it's like, okay, rap's mostly here, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh, who's this guy now? Oh, we got to listen to, you know, Eminem shows up now. You know, does he know anybody else? Is there anyone, you know, in his orbit that we need to sign? And, you know, because we don't want to miss out on the next Eminem or, you know, it's fun to see that stuff. But also, yeah, it leads to a lot of trying real hard. But you're right. It's every facet does that. Pro wrestling, sports, music, all of it.
Yep.
If there's a hot, you know, all of a sudden in wrestling, it's like, oh, nobody comes out of Scotland. Now all of a sudden a guy comes out and he's really good, and it's like, oh, we need to go look at guys over there now. It's like, you know, much easier now with the internet. You know, you don't actually have to like go scout. You know, you can just jump online and check out stuff. But yeah. It reminds me, there's a local record store that place they were originally, like the owner put a bunch of like 45s up on the, like almost like they were tiles for the roof kind of thing, and it looked kind of cool and all that. And then he passed away, you know, somebody else took over the business and whatever, and now, like now I see they're running like Help Save Culture Clash is the name of the place, and they're like Help Save Culture Clash. And he used to have bands would play inside the record store and stuff like that. You know, he was always doing just kind of fun, cool stuff for the client, you know, for his customers and whatever. But after he left over, it's like people, I think it's one of those where I think a lot of people went in there because of him, you know, and now that he's not there, people go in and they're like, it's not the same, you know. And now I see this thing the other day, you know, where they're running a, you know, Save Culture Clash thing. And there's a lot of people that are like, I've got a lot of memories tied to Culture Clash, but it's in a different location now. It's not the same owner, you know, kind of thing. So the memory's not maybe as strong. It's kind of like when your favorite sports team moves to a new city, you know, it's like, oh yeah, I mean, I'm still a fan, but also like they left me, you know. But it's weird seeing that stuff, because I was thinking about that. Like, it reminded me of like, even when like Tony and I closed our shop, you know, for a while after that, I had people reaching out to me like, hey, are you guys going to reopen? Or, you know, those kind of things. Or when people went to other shops and they were like, yeah, I don't like this, or I don't like that. And, you know, but I actually just, the reason I'm getting to all this is I just recently had someone that I haven't talked to in years, and he reached out to me and was like, hey, did you ever reopen a place or what? He doesn't live in Toledo. He lives a little out of town. And cause he's like, I've seen a lot of, you know, stores open. I didn't know if you were associated with any of them. And I was like, no. I was like, as much as I would love to have done that, I was like, never had the opportunities to do it. So it was just kind of cool that somebody, even after, God, it's been over 10 years probably since I've talked to him, you know, still reached out to me and was like, hey, I want to come help, you know, I want to support you if you're open. That was kind of a cool feeling, you know, because I know a lot of people like going to our place. So it was, you know,
that's cool.
One of the things that was hard about closing was also not just for how difficult it was on us, but seeing when I was telling like the regulars, like, hey, your hangout place is going away, you know, and you could just see how much it sucked for everybody. Yeah. So, but yeah, that was a nice kind of from the past type of thing, you know, that I haven't had in a long time now. I think most people were just like, okay, this isn't happening, and they've moved on with their lives, you know, because it's been 20 years now. So, which is wild in its own right. But anyway, so yeah, I just want to bring that up. That was kind of cool. But also this week, I found myself. I've noticed I finally had therapy last week, and boy, am I glad I did, because my therapist is like, yeah, I'm gonna have some surgery, so I'm gonna be gone until January.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, oh, okay. And she goes, there's someone else that I've talked with before, so they're familiar with me and my case. So if I do need to talk to somebody, there actually is, for me, an ideal backup, because she's very familiar with me. So, but she goes, otherwise, she's like, I'll just schedule. She goes, if you want to schedule, I'm like, yeah, because if you're going to be off all that time, I imagine if people haven't scheduled, there's going to be a bottleneck, afterwards. So let's go ahead and get that out of the way now. So, yeah, I scheduled that, and it was nice to get back in and do that, because it had been a while since I had done that, and I was talking to her that I've noticed that my safety zone is, and for anyone who's not familiar with what I'm talking about, it's like the area in which I feel safest. It's at home, like 100%, and it diminishes the further I get from home, basically. But I've noticed the circle of comfort has kind of shrunk in even more, to where I don't want to go do anything, like even the grocery store, or just those, like, I just don't want to leave. And it's not out of fear or anything like that. I mean, it is, you know what I mean? Like, it's the agoraphobia situation, but it's not like there's nothing new that has caused it. Well, like, when COVID came around, I already had issues with going out. Then that happened, and I was like, I really don't want to leave my house, because, there actually was danger out there, and there still is. I mean, it's still out there. But I've noticed that, and I really, like I was telling her, it's like, I really think what's happening is, I really think this is the part of my life where not having a license has really come back to bite me in the hiney. Because I can't even just kind of force myself to really leave, like I could go for a walk, but I'm still in that zone, like I can't really push myself out of that zone unless I arrange for a ride, or I get someone else to take me somewhere. And I think if I had gotten my license, I don't think this would have been as much of a problem, of course, because then I would have opportunity to get out and go force myself. So I've done a few things, like when I go to the grocery store now, I haven't been doing the pickup as much. I've been actually just going in, walking around. That way it kind of forces me out of the house for a little longer, even if it's for 20 minutes more, it's still a little longer than before and whatever. But I keep noticing how much of a problem it's becoming, and it's hard to push through that, because again, I don't drive. So, and it's like, I know there's various people that if I call, I could get out of the house type of thing. But I also, that's the other side of it, is now I also have to fight I don't want to be a burden. I don't want to just be calling people just because I want to get out of the house. You know what I mean? It's like, you kind of, when you ask people for rides, you kind of want to save that for when you actually need something. That way you're not calling, I'm not calling somebody 3 or 4 times. Hey, can we, type of deal. Yeah. So that's been really frustrating. But other than that, I haven't really, it's been very interesting, because eBay has been maybe slower than it's ever been for me. Like, I'm maybe selling one thing a week, and it's only generally like a $15 thing. That's good. Like, that's not enough. And I've watched YouTube videos of here's things to, ways to trick the algorithm and all these things, and none of it's working. And I know some of it's that I don't have a lot of like new exciting stuff. That always helps. But it's just the idea that, and it's not just me, I've seen a lot of videos where people are like, are your sales dead and all this? And I know there's always an element of people getting really iffy about things around the time of a presidential election. There's always, plus with the cost of things recently, you know, I can understand where people have cut back on certain things and whatever, but even still, we've gone through those kind of, like, we've gone through an actual recession and I sold more than I'm selling now, you know? So I don't know. There's something weird afoot, but it really sucks. And, you know, so that's been a major issue for me because, you know, that's my last lifeline of money, you know, and, you know, money is a major trigger for me. So it's like, I've been just worried, and it's like, eventually it'll probably, rebound, but it's just like, especially, you know, Christmas season is fast approaching. So hopefully things will start picking up, you know, the election's in a couple days. So hopefully after that, maybe people will, you know, start looking toward Christmas or whatever. But I don't know. In the meantime, it sucks, you know.
It's the election.
Yeah, that's what I figure it is.
Yeah, that's what they say, that consumer spending drops before an election dramatically.
Yeah, it always has. You know, it's like
it's just crazy.
Yep. It's why, like, I never expect there to be sales in around April because of taxes, around August because back to school, and then around any sort of presidential election. There's always a slowdown in spending on like eBay stuff. But like I said, it's wild how in the past I've seen a slowdown, but usually still, you know, I'm still moving some stuff. And right now it's like, I mean, I've dropped prices, I've run sales, I've done, and nothing is moving type of thing. And like I said, it's not just me. I'm seeing it from like eBay sellers on YouTube and stuff like that. They're all talking about it. So I that makes me feel a little better. At least I'm not going, okay, it's just whatever my stuff is, or what. It's like, okay, this apparently is across the board, you know, that there's a slowdown at the moment, unless you have like hot items, you know. So, but it's still, you know, really frustrating when that is, like I said, that's my free money. That's my, you know, that's the only income I really have. And it isn't much. It's never been much, but it's like when it goes from not much to almost non-existent. You know, I talked on here before about how, you know, like to go out with somebody and it's like, okay, that's gonna be like $30, and it's like, you know, and like now it's like, man, that's gonna take me 2 weeks to make up. You know, with the way things are selling for me at the moment, you know, it makes it even harder to spend any money on anything. You know, I've been super tight with what I've bought because I don't know when I can replace it, and I have things I need to pay. You know, I have some bills I got to take care of, so that obviously comes first. But on the other side of that, I haven't like spiraled hard off of that, which is actually a little surprising, because usually when things tighten up that much for me, I'm usually like, you know, spiraling pretty bad. So as of right now, nothing. You know, I think a lot of it is because I've seen that it's like, okay, this is affecting everyone. It's not just me. So yeah, I think that's about it for me though. So all right, let's hear your hot takes, truth bombs.
well, first,
I wish we had a soundboard, you know.
Yeah. No, So first, I had a work thing that happened. Oh, actually, who's going back to the gym? This guy.
No, it's like, it's definitely not me. So yeah, okay.
I can't believe it. I've actually been consistently going back. Yeah.
What started that? You just decided to go, or you?
Yeah, it was nothing in particular. I just it's been something that's been on my mind for a while. Every time I go to the dentist, or anytime they take my blood pressure's a little bit high. And usually it comes down in a few moments, but you know, it's been enough times now where it's like, okay, you need to go get your freaking heart rate up.
Yeah, because you don't want to end up on a medicine for it if it's something you can easily
and it runs
control.
In my family.
Right, me too. I'm on medicine for it, but yeah.
So I just went, and one Sunday after work, I went in, and And that was rough.
I bet. When was the last time you were in? It's probably been a while, hasn't it?
Years.
Yeah. I was like, I know. I was just trying to think of the last time I remember you talking about it, and it's been a long time.
COVID.
So,
Like,
yeah. Oh my.
So,
Oof.
my regular going to the gym ended with COVID.
Yeah.
I at one point at the end of what it was, we were coming into Christmas time, and it was like I'd been working on all the protocols for the health club, so I'm like, I know this is a I can go here, and it was around Christmas, and I walked in there, and the amount of people that were in that health club, I'm like, nope.
Oh yeah.
And then like I think maybe I waited another 6 months to a year. I went in and I ended up with COVID a week later.
Oh yeah.
And that was enough I know it's totally coincidence, but that was it. I was done.
Yeah. So this time you like show up, you put on your workout clothes, and you're like, whoo, like I'm good. I got my burn.
Yeah, that only took about 40 minutes.
Yeah, I bet. Yeah.
If that. Oh man, it was rough, but it got easier a lot faster. And by the end of that week, I did. And then I've also been I did just a treadmill over there, and then I actually did a workout at home the next day. So I kind of set up a little thing at home that I can do, and that's great too, because it's at this point, I'm 55 years old. I don't need to be like, yeah.
What are you talking about?
Throwing up the heavyweight anymore.
Yeah.
It's like I will get there eventually, but it's not necessary.
Yeah. No, it's one of those, like, I think we've talked about it before. It's like, especially as we all age, it's like flexibility and such is so much more important than having huge muscles.
Last Friday, I was like, because I went to the chiropractor, and he's like, "So you doing any stretching?" I'm like, "Not yet. I'll get there." So on Friday, I did a little workout at home. Did some stuff, and I'm like, all right, let's do some stretching. I was more sweaty and winded from stretching. I think the dogs actually came over and were concerned because I was making more noises trying to stretch than I was doing any exercises. Oh, it was so bad. It was so embarrassing.
Well, at least you did it at home. Yeah. At least you weren't making those noises at the gym.
At the gym. Oh, it's
like
great.
People coming over. Are you okay, sir? Do you need us to push on your medical alert bracelet, or
right? Do we need to get the defibrillator?
Yeah. You sure you're okay?
So a couple weeks ago, I had to go to Boise to get my car repaired, and on my way back, there's a phone call from where I grew up in Marin, from Santa Fe, and it was a prefix that I used to have the same cell phone prefix. So I'm like, okay, I got to grab this. And it turned out it was the developer of our property where I work. Oh. And he came right at it, wondering what was going on between me and one of my coworkers. And I'm just like, I eventually was like, I don't know what you're talking about. And he's like, well, let me then give the summary. And I go, okay, I know what you're talking about. And I just told him, I said, there's no problem. There's no problem. And, I explained, this is, I know you didn't want to get into specifics, but this is the specifics of it. He's like, okay, that all makes sense. And I went into what the problems we're having in the office and everything. And I didn't want to go into it, but I eventually just was very honest with him. And when I got done, it was like this huge, like, emotional hangover, because it's like, whoa, it's like, it was heavy. And by the time I got, and this is on a Friday. So on Monday, when I get in, I get a chance to see that coworker, and I texted him over the weekend, and he's the one that when push comes to shove, he starts stirring the pot. He has no qualms about it. He will call everybody, and usually it's annoying, but usually it needs to be done. Like, right. The problem is he tends to, he
stirs
tends to
too
go
much.
Yeah, he stirs about stuff that's none of his business. So
Yeah.
But in what was great was
Well, it's
we had
hard
a-
to stop a tornado.
right, yeah. So
Yeah.
we set up a meeting with our board president and the general manager, and I'm having issues with the general manager, and I wanted to have. And the other stuff is not an issue. And I actually came up with a solution in my head, and I threw it out at my coworker, and my coworker's like, I had the same thought. I'm like, perfect, we got this. So we went into the meeting, and I basically just stopped the board president right there. I said, I've got a solution, and he is the solution is one of our problem employees. Someone that's really like, it's on my last nerve. And I was like, maybe this will help him, to inspire him, to feel like he has some agency here, and that he can, he's needed and wanted, and he has a little bit of control of his own ship, and that might give him an opportunity for some promotion or whatever, because he's basically been digging a hole to, year out. And it really felt good. It felt so good to just to come at it at the right way. That let's lift somebody up. And I mean, I got my shots in. I got to throw my shots at it and say, like he's a problem. if he doesn't change it, I just said it. I said I want him gone. It's a waste. He is stealing time. It's basically theft.
Yeah.
And the main other thing was I got my shots in on the general manager too. Like I had plenty of them, and it wasn't. It was just things I wanted to say, and I said them. And afterwards, my coworker was a little upset. He's like, "Man, I kind of hoped that he would get on the hot seat a little more." And I'm like, why?
Yeah.
I said what I needed to say, and we saved that meeting. We made it. We showed that with a little bit of cooperation and conversation, you can accomplish anything.
Yeah.
And a little positive thinking, and it's our GM's lack of action that is causing all these problems. He just refuses to take action.
Yeah.
And I've even lately drawn some lines in the sand where I just said, I'm not working on this project. You do it. There are things that I don't need to be involved with. And he does nothing. Like weeks go by and nothing happens. And then this last week, my coworker, who I worked it out, he was on the phone making all the phone calls. I'm like, why are you doing his job for him?
Yeah.
Like it needs to get done. I'm like, let him drown.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah. Because the more everyone else does it, he's just he'll just keep doing it that way. Yeah.
Yeah. He just stands behind his desk all day long, doing nothing, not making it. You're right next to a telephone.
Yeah.
All the resources you need are right there.
Yeah. And that's the job. Like
that's the job.
That's not anything asking him to do anything that's outside of his job.
No, it is his job. Yeah. And
yeah.
I don't know where all that ends up going, but it ties into what happened this last week. So it's nice to get some resolution on that, but then the confusion and lack of communication kicked in again. We had our first staff meeting in 2 years. 2 years.
Wow.
I found a sign-up sheet from the last one, and it was October of 2022.
Oh my goodness.
That was our last staff meeting. And I mean like a regular staff meeting.
Yeah. We
have staff meetings every once in a while if I call them.
Wow.
But it was the first one that the general manager actually called. And we just had a disagreement got brought up. Didn't have to if somebody wants to call me out on something in a staff meeting, they get what they get.
Yeah.
You could talk to me personally about it and we could work it out ourselves.
Yeah.
Or we could have it out in front of everybody.
Yeah.
And it felt really crummy. Like,
yeah.
I was like, ugh, this just didn't have to happen. And, it takes two. So part of it was my thing, but I just kind of let it go and I'm going to have my weekend. So Friday I go to see Kiki, who was on the last podcast down in Idaho Falls. And we decided to go get some edibles.
Oh boy.
Psychedelic mushroom variety.
Oh, that's a whole different level. Yeah.
Which are legal.
Yeah.
because they don't actually have psilocybin in them. They have some of the offshoots and some stuff.
Oh, okay.
And I took too much. And I had something in between a spiritual awakening and a complete breakdown.
Yeah, I think Bill Burr talked about that, because the first time he did mushrooms, he said he ended up with clarity, and he said it's what set him on a path to really like fix himself, of like letting go of a lot of the anger he's carried and like all this other stuff. But he even was like very much like, that he got too much.
Yeah, and it was something where,
although in fairness, I think his probably were psilocybin ones.
Yeah. And I actually can't. I a long time ago I had a really heavy trip, and I've never been able to do them since then, because I just get in my head.
Yeah.
And what I mean by in my head, I get quiet. I can't even process anything. Like it's just it's dark, and it's almost debilitating.
Oh, wow.
So that's why I've never done that. But I was like, okay, this should be different. And like I said, went in too hard, but immediately I was like, oh, I needed this so bad. And that was the strange part, was instantly realizing that, wow, I have not been happy with myself now for a while.
Oh, yeah.
Like a real long time. And I'm going to tie this in with sobriety shit. Sorry.
All right. Sobriety's not a bad word.
There's one of the founders of Alcoholics Anonymous evidently experimented with LSD in the 60s.
Okay.
Because they were looking at the idea of, could LSD provide enough of a spiritual awakening to get someone to stop drinking, or at least maybe get into recovery.
Okay.
And the results weren't that good. Like it wasn't enough that it still didn't beat rock bottom.
Yeah.
Like rock bottom is the best.
Yeah.
Whatever that bottom is, that's the best.
Yeah. And I can understand it, because like the hope would maybe be that then people wouldn't have to hit rock bottom, because sometimes rock bottoms can be destructive, not just like mentally.
Exactly.
They can be destructive to others and blah, 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 So, yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And what I realized over the weekend was I had an opportunity to see the things that could happen and that could be a bottom. And I freaked out, but I was also processing through it. Like, how do I get through this? The hard part was I was a little out of my head, so I couldn't quite put things into words.
Yeah, right.
And Kiki at one point sent a text message to our girlfriend Brianna and said, who's also been on the Crazy Life, and said, I think I broke him. Will you please call? I did a very bad thing. And she did. It wasn't her fault.
Yeah,
it was
yeah,
great.
of course.
Bri called. We had a great conversation. She was very concerned. I'm like, you guys don't need to be concerned. I'm freaking out about some stuff, but this is all good. Like, this is really good.
Yeah.
Like, I had this moment of clarity where I'm like, wow, I've been on the self-centered kind of track now for a while. And I know it, right? This is none of this. It was all the things that somewhere inside of me, I know felt wrong, but not bad enough to do anything about it.
Well, and we've talked about that on here before, about how a lot of times, and not a rock bottom even situation, but like you realize that something's not quite right in your life, but you're like, it's not that bad. And you kind of gloss it over, you bury it a little bit. And then eventually something clicks and you go, oh, wow, this is affecting me negatively. I need some help here, or what, or make a change, whatever.
There's something in the AA Big Book. It says intuitively know how to handle situations that used to baffle us. And that intuition is part of, it's just part of me now.
Yeah.
I have that intuition. I know when something isn't quite feeling right. but it's still up to me to take action on it. And things hadn't set right, but I needed them to really feel wrong.
Yep.
And that experience made them feel really wrong.
Yeah, I bet.
To the point where I was really worried. And, of course, the next day was some clarity. It was the funniest part was the next day I got to explain it. I looked up a few things that I was trying to come up with, and I got to explain it to Kiki. And finally she's like, okay, I get this now.
Yeah.
Because she was a little confused and scared, right?
I'm just picturing you like half speaking, and you're like half clear, half gibberish.
Right. It pretty much was, yeah.
And she's what?
Yeah. And it wasn't just work; it was music stuff. It's everything that I've kind of been, let's see, on a fine line between is this worth it and is it not?
Right.
And with work usually has to do with the old should it be said right now, and should it be said right now by me.
Yeah.
And for the most, it's funny. The one thing with my coworker who was on a pathway to get fired, that never even came up for me because clearly I'm in a good place about it. Now, as far as what happened, to me, it was no different than friends of mine that do journeying, whether it's with ayahuasca, peyote, sweat lodge, anything like that.
Yeah.
It was anything like a vision quest. The thing is, I didn't prepare for it.
First mistake.
Yeah, and it's something that I would ordinarily take seriously.
Yes,
you don't go into this certain things, and
it's like I know a lot of people when they've done I've known people who've done psilocybin like mushrooms, and usually you'd want someone in the room with you that can make sure you drink some water and take care of yourself along the journey. And
you also want to be
careful.
You want to make sure you're in the right headspace for it. Clearly, I wasn't.
Yeah.
Now, it wasn't my intention to go that far. It just it happened.
Yeah.
Ordinarily, you really check on this thing. Yeah. So part of then this whole thing also was, okay, I don't drink. I haven't had a drink since 2007. I will never have a drink. There's nothing ever in the world that alcohol will do good for me. It is the core of my being. As much as sometimes a glass of port would sound really great with some really rich chocolate. Do they
have non-alcoholic wine?
They do now, and it's really good.
Okay.
Now what they're doing is they're not even bothering to try to make it taste like wine.
Oh, okay. It's its own thing now?
It's its own thing, and it's delicious.
Okay. Because I know Tony's been going through where he's been drinking a lot of non-alcoholic beer, and he's really finding that there's quite a few decent ones now versus I remember, years ago there was like O'Doul's and that was it. And O'Doul's is trash, So it's cool that, and not just that, we've talked on Salty Language about like the like mocktails and how there's like non-alcoholic whiskeys and all this kind of stuff out there now.
Tequila,
so it's really
particularly
cool. Yeah, that's really cool for people that are, even if you're not an alcoholic, if you just don't want to get wrecked on a Tuesday night, but you want a drink,
Yeah. Like the tequilas evidently are really good. It's kind of mixed bag with some stuff. That's what I like about.
Do you feel like that could be like for you? I'm not asking you to speak on anyone else. Is there any chance you feel like any of that stuff could be like a gateway back to you? Or do you feel like if you were drinking that and you liked it, you still wouldn't be tempted to go the other way?
No, not at all. Like I had a non-alcoholic IPA.
Yeah. Well, when we went to Chicago, you had a couple of, what were they, Heinekens or something that was a non-alcoholic. Because I saw you with a beer bottle and I was like, wait, what?
Yeah.
And then you were like, oh, it's a non-alcoholic. Like, oh.
Those were okay, but like now they're like that IPA was legit.
Yeah, that's what Tony was saying. Some of them have been really good.
And how I knew it was legit is after I got done with my food, I'm like, oh, I can't drink this by itself. Like it was just too heavy. I wanted something that was just lightly hoppy at that point.
Yeah.
And that's how I knew. I'm like, wow, this.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so and now they're making these low ABV and basically they're like seltzers with a hops flavor.
Yeah, I've heard about those. Yeah,
like that tastes better to me than any beer trying to be a non-alcoholic beer.
Yeah.
And the same thing with these wines, where you have a wine that's trying to remove the alcohol but still be wine. It's horrible. It just tastes like garbage.
It makes sense, like instead of trying to impersonate something, it's trying to just be its own thing. That makes a ton of sense. So
and it's awesome. And
sorry, I didn't mean to derail you this much.
No, it was cool. What was cool about it is like there's actually it's like a wine in that it has elements and flavors and profiles and it makes it really interesting to consume the beverages.
Okay, cool.
But the whole thing is, for me, is alcohol. That's my thing, and you don't ever hear me say I'm clean and sober.
Yeah.
I'll say I'm sober, but I've never said I'm clean. And that's because the clean part is the addict and then the Narcotics Anonymous and the NA. And there's so much hypocrisy in that world. To go into to hear people talk about a drug is a drug is a drug, and then they go out and smoke cigarettes and drink coffee all night long afterwards.
That's
I'm just like, you know what? It's not then.
Yeah.
A drug is not a drug. Oh, well, these are legal. All right, well, so's weed now.
Yeah,
but
alcohol's legal.
Yeah, I mean, and I just and then there's the whole part of mental health medicines and there's been this. I've always kind of found my first sponsor really said it best. He's like, it's your intent that matters. At least to me. Mm-hmm. Said, if you're not feeling well and you've got the NyQuil and it's got the alcohol in it, then drink the NyQuil with the alcohol in it. Like, you're not drinking it to get you feel like garbage. You want to feel better.
Yeah.
You want to relieve your symptoms. Said, what would bother me more is if I walked into your house and you had a case of non-alcoholic beer in your refrigerator.
Yeah.
And his whole thing is, you haven't changed any of your behaviors. They're exactly the same.
So what he's saying is it's like your day would be just knocking back beers. So it's still knocking back beers. They're just non-alcoholic. So you're still an addict.
It's the intent.
It's the intent. Yeah. Okay. I see what you're saying a little bit in that. Okay.
Right. Like if
obviously you're an addict anyway. That didn't quite land like it did in my head. But you know what I mean? Like you're still addicted to the motion and such.
You're not changing any of your behaviors. Actually, you just removed alcohol.
Yeah,
and this is the whole point of alcoholism. If just removing alcohol would make things better, there wouldn't be an AA. But it's not the alcohol; it's a problem. It's our alcoholism. It's a set of behaviors. It's a set of it's other things, and you need to get to the core of those in order for you to find a new way of living where you don't need that crutch any longer. And like you said, like he's like, if every day you got done skiing and you went down to the bar and got yourself a non-alcoholic beer, what's changed? Nothing.
Yeah. Other than you're not getting drunk. I mean, that's
it.
Right.
Yeah. But you're still going and getting a beer.
Yeah.
And that means you're not
having known a couple of other alcoholics and knowing that when they switched to non-alcoholic beers, that's exactly what they did though. Was they just kept going to the same bar, but they were getting non-alcoholic beers. Yeah. And it was, well, I missed the socializing and such. And it's like, and I never thought about it beyond that, because I think most of us just think of it from the health part of it, not health, but I don't know how to word it, from the alcoholic point, but not the addict point, if that makes sense. In that you're like, oh, well, now they're removing the alcohol. So it's no different than if they went and drank pop at the beer. Or at the bar, I mean, Yeah. And you don't think about the behaviors or whatever involved.
But it's also like, if you did go down and get yourself a Diet Coke, that would be at least a little different, because you're not pretending that your life is exactly the same minus alcohol.
Right.
You're acknowledging the fact that this is something that because I mean, I know I've heard like you and Tony talking about it with other people regarding other people. It's like, oh, well, I don't want them to think, whatever of me, or, like you're Like you were talking a story about your dad where you
Yep.
have it, and you have this and peer pressure and all that stuff. And that is what's going to get you back to an actual drink.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
Right.
Because
So
everybody, why are you drinking that? Why are you drinking,
right. So that's
Yeah.
what gets you right. Versus where if you actually say, I don't drink anymore and this is a Coke.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I'm still enjoying my time with you. That
Right.
is a person owning the fact that things are different now.
Yeah.
And you either accept it or you don't.
Right.
And like,
And by the
I've
way,
been-
I'd like to point out this is a boundary that more people need to work on. Because first of all, a lot of people need to quit judging others. If you're out with your friends and you've been drinking beers and all of a sudden they order a water, they don't need any peer pressure at that point. If they're ordering a water, it's either because they're planning on driving or because they need a spacer because their body's telling them, I need some water. And it's like in neither situation should you be like going after them to have more drink. We need to get better about that.
I've had the opposite happen where we went. It was right after I got sober, and I was hanging out with a group of people who when they said we're going to go down and watch some live music and have a beer, maybe shoot some pool, they went, saw some live music, had a beer, and shot some pool.
Yeah.
These were to me, these are normal drinkers.
Yeah.
Every once in a while, we'd end up at the martini bar. Everyone's in a booth. They're going around. Everyone's ordering their little drink. Gets to me and I say, "Can I get a cranberry and soda?" And it's amazing how many people that had already ordered a beverage are like, "You know what? I'd like one of those too."
Oh, so
Because
you're
the only
peer
reason they
pressure guy.
ordered,
No.
it was the opposite, right?
Yeah,
I made it
right.
okay not to drink. Because
Yeah.
somebody was like, you know what? They actually didn't want to have a martini,
Yeah.
or whatever, whatever it was,
Yeah, sure.
that they were having.
Yeah, because look,
and
I like a drink. When I go out, I typically will have, I'll have 3. Sometimes I'll have a little more. Most of the time, I'm like 1 to 3 is where I'm at. And I'm not doing anything insane. I'm not doing it all the time or every day or any of this stuff. But it's like there's times where I go out and I'll just be like, you know what, I'm just gonna get, just give me a Coke or give me a water or whatever else, because it's like I'm just not feeling it tonight. Like I don't want to drink, and I've gotten to where I just do that if that's how I'm feeling. I didn't used to be that way because it was always I better order a beer or a whiskey or something, because if I don't, and it's like, who cares? Like, what are they gonna do? They can stop calling me and going out. It's like, well, if we're only going out to drink, I don't always want to do that.
Yeah.
So,
And
like
then-
what you said about my dad. My dad wanted to go hang out with his friends. My dad was never, ever really a drinker. From what I understand of him, he might occasionally have, a Jack and Coke or something to that, or a rum and Coke or something. And that was about it for him. He wasn't a beer drinker at all. And I think a lot of that was his dad used to go to the bar a lot. And my grandmother used to send my dad to the bar to get his dad to come home,
Yeah.
So it wouldn't shock me. I never talked to my dad about it, so I don't know for sure, but it wouldn't shock me if there's an element of that to it, that he's like, I don't want to be that same guy,
Be that same guy. Yeah.
but he was never, honestly, I don't know if I ever saw my dad drink any alcohol, unless maybe some champagne on New Year's Eve. Because it was also my mom and dad's anniversary. So maybe a couple times where we were out with people, maybe he'd, have a sip of champagne or something with everybody. Like I'm that way too. If everyone pours champagne on New Year's Eve, I might have a sip for the toast or whatever. I'm done with it. I'll just be like, who wants this kind of a thing? Because I'm not drinking all of it. But that was it with him. I never, I've seen my mom have every once in a while, like I've had beer around and my mom would be like, can I have just a little, and I'll pour 4 ounces or something of a beer, and she'll drink, and then she won't ask for it again for 8 years. So yeah, neither of my parents were really that way.
So one of the other things is going to concerts. I mean,
Yeah.
I've been to a couple of the Grateful Dead, offshoot band concerts, and I was high out of my head. You
Yeah.
can't not be.
Well, I
everyone
think
around you
just standing
smoking weed.
around. Yeah, I was like,
Pretty
I think
much,
just
yeah.
standing around, you're gonna get high.
And that's never, and the thing is, that's never been my thing. Weed's never been, I hate how it makes me feel. I've never
Same
liked
here.
it.
Yeah. I'm good with
and-
gummies, but I'm not good with smoking. Also, I don't like smoking anything. Like, I like cigars, and once every 6 to 8 years, maybe I'll have one, like
Yeah.
it's very rare I have one. I like them. I love the smell of them. But again, I lost a dad to lung cancer, and and again, I know a lot of his he worked around harsh chemicals a lot of his life, but still, I've just tried to not pollute my chemicals or my lungs. It might be the only organs of mine I've not tried to pollute. So
Yeah. Yeah, and there's prescription drugs. When I had my knee surgery, there was one night where I really didn't need to take that painkiller for pain,
yeah,
and I took it.
yeah,
And a lot of people would say that in any of these instances, you are no longer sober and you should reset your sobriety date.
yeah,
And I've always been like, yeah, but what my intent wasn't to go get high. I mean, I went to a show.
yeah.
All right. I've walked into a cloud of freaking weed before with my
Oh,
band,
dude.
and
I've
and
been to
it's so
concerts where I'm not partaking in anything and I've gotten high. I mean, because
Oh,
there's
yeah,
it's an indoor venue, everybody's smoking,
yeah.
and it's hard not to. I mean, you're taking it all in. I mean,
Yeah.
they might as well just breathe it right into your mouth.
Yeah.
Like it's so.
And
thick.
it's so strong now.
Yeah.
And it doesn't take much.
No. Oh well, that's the other thing is I'm not a weed smoker, so it doesn't take a lot for it to hit me.
Yeah. So where I'm getting at with all this is like, okay, this is the kind of thing that they say you reset your sobriety date. And you know what? I don't care.
I was thinking about that too, because I see people all the time, and I'm no way, of course, because this. Every time you bring up a sobriety date or anything, I'm always like, awesome, happy for you, that kind of stuff. And I see it all the time. Whenever I see somebody post it on Twitter, they were like, hey, this is this, man. Even if it's like, this is 1 week sober, I'm liking it, kind of a
awesome.
thing.
Yeah.
Because I love it. Like if that means something to you, I'm on board. Because you know me, I'm about the team. If the team's winning, I'm supporting. Right.
That's it.
And if you feel you've fallen, I'm also the type very much to be like, is there anything I can do to help? Because again, it's about the team, right?
Yeah.
Even if I don't know a person, they're on the team until they've somehow done something that they're not on the team. I'm supportive of anybody trying to help, better themselves if they feel that it's bettering themselves. And but I've seen some people talking about what you were just talking about, like the California sober concept, to where you don't drink, but you smoke weed and all this stuff. And I'm like, what bothers me more there is that there's a pressure to feel that you have to justify something in order to keep your sobriety, if that makes sense, or lose your sobriety. That's it's I don't know.
Sharon had that happen with a friend of hers who she's taking one of the weight loss medicines.
Yeah.
And so her friend's like, that's basically speed. And you shouldn't, right? Like, but it's prescribed by a doctor. It gets so it's so convoluted now. It's that this part of it. I'm not talking the alcohol part. Like, right?
Yeah.
I can sit there and say, I'm Heno and I'm an alcoholic.
Right.
That's a fact.
Yeah.
I am never going to say, and I'm clean and sober, because
the
whole clean part is nonsense to me now.
Yeah, I've noticed online there's way more gatekeeping on that side of it than there is on the drinking part. Yeah. It's garbage. Why do people have to go out of their way to knock somebody down on it? It's like, look, if like I told you, remember, I think you and I talked about this once before, that like in my head, it's like, even if a person has not had a drink in say 20 years and they have a drink and then they don't have another drink for 20 years, in my head, I don't feel like you should like beat yourself up, throw your air quote sobriety away. You know what I mean? Like, I still feel like, okay, across like 40 years, you've had a drink. I think you've done pretty freaking well. Like, I still feel like that's something to celebrate if across the board. Now, if you go into a destructive cycle and you have 40 drinks, that's a different story, because now you're you need some help maybe to, it's not about the alcohol. Again, it's about the behaviors and the intent there. Like why did you crash at that point? Like what are we doing here? Again, how do we get you okay again? I don't give a shit I don't care about the alcohol as much as I care about the behaviors and such. Like what can we do to make sure you're not being self-destructive? That's the important stuff. And it's like I understand people taking great pride in the coins and the sobriety and all that stuff, but I also hate that the second that air quote sobriety is cracked, it's almost like you're supposed to go in a shame spiral. And if you don't, other people will put you in one. Like they'll provide it for you. And it's like, what are you doing here? Like, you're supposed to be supportive of people. If someone has a crack in their sobriety, again, it should be about, hey, what can we do to help to make sure you're not self-destructive?
And
instead of beating you up.
Most of the time, that's how it goes.
Yeah. Okay.
There's most of the time, if somebody walks in and all of a sudden is taking a 24-hour chip or a 30-day chip after they'd had 12, 13, 14 years, they're celebrated. They're
because you still showed up for the meeting.
Well, and there's a lesson to be learned there.
Yeah.
And it's usually a very powerful lesson.
Yeah.
And it's the people that go out and come back and go out and come back and go out and come back are honestly they have a great story to tell, because it's usually more relatable to people who struggle.
Yeah. Well, it shows how hard it is too.
Yeah.
Like it really does. It shows that this isn't just, I showed up for a meeting, now I win for 30 years or whatever. Like, no, it's still a fight for, some people, the fight's harder than, similar to like depression. Some of us fight it every day. Some people fight it a few times a week, there's varying levels to it, but it's still a fight for everybody involved. It's not to be minimized in any regard. And same with that is, like you said, even if somebody's in and out, like I said, it's, that's the beautiful part about this stuff, is it should be about, hey, what can we all do to help so you're not being self-destructive, like, or getting you back to being okay kind of thing first. And then we can address the other stuff, along the way.
Yeah, that's most of my experience with it. But so
good. Okay. I've just seen a lot online about where the drug part of it, like you said, I've seen a lot of people gatekeep on the other side of it more so, about like, I took some Tylenol today, I broke my sobriety kind of thing. And it's like I don't know. It's like if you're an alcoholic and you have some Tylenol, I know there's addiction can be addiction for some, but there's also a lot of people that can take some Tylenol and be okay and not take the whole bottle of Tylenol or, and just go back to life, and I don't think there's need for gatekeeping in some of that.
I think it, like I said, mostly happens with NA.
Yeah.
And not so much as AA, because AA is very, very singular, and NA is so wide open because there's so many different drugs that you can be,
Yeah. Right.
Come in, whether it's coke, heroin, speed, weed. There's a whole bunch of different things.
Yeah, sure.
And so then the other thing is like, I don't go to meetings anymore.
Yeah.
I was telling Sharon tonight, I get so much more out of general discussion of recovery, and I don't care what it is.
Yeah.
Whether we're talking about recovery from mental health or eating disorders or drugs or whatever it is.
Yeah.
I get way more enjoyment out of discussions about that than I do with it being specifically about alcohol anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And the other part of it is that I do hold opinions that are counter to what people would consider to be a shining example of AA. And people used to think I was that type. Like they wouldn't actually tell me things because they thought I would be judgy to them. But I was like, I've never been that way. I've never been that way. But I at this point, like I will do some events every once in a while with sober community, but for the most part, like I said, it's not a big thing for me. And so I just look at it as like, I know when it was that I had my last drink, and that's all that matters. And I think I'm just going to stop counting because it's not part of my life anymore. And there is nothing in this world that will get me to go back to anything having to do with alcohol. Like nothing. There's there's
Well,
nothing in this world.
and
Nothing.
also realistically, I mean, you think about it, and again, I don't want to diminish anybody who's on whatever streak they're on or their sobriety or blah blah blah, right? This is just me talking to you, but it's like, if you were at a point that you had a drink or started drinking again, it doesn't matter how many days you had. It could have been 5 minutes. It could have been a month. It could be 30 years. If you go back into drinking, all that matters is the now, really, when it comes to that. And again, it's what's making you drink now, because it's like, otherwise it's really about like leveraging guilt against temptation. Like you're using essentially like, man, I've been clean for, 20 years. I can't, I don't want to throw all that away. And then that, like I said, it kind of just leverages guilt versus temptation. And
maybe you're not throwing it away. I'm willing to say
exactly.
that.
Yeah, that's what I was saying before. Like, what if you just, a person just has a drink and then they don't drink again for another 20 years? I think you've still done amazingly well there. I don't feel like there's any, there shouldn't be any need for guilt or feeling bad or that you threw anything away.
Or maybe the problems that you had to do with the situation at the time, and those situations are all different now.
And we all evolve too. You mature, you've learned how to cope with actual feelings now. And, like you said before, that was the hardest part of your sobriety, was learning how to feel and cope with things you were feeling without grabbing a bottle.
Yeah. Like now, I know plenty of people that they may have been heavy drinkers at one point. Now they're basically just kind of normal. For me, I know what alcohol does to me, and it basically it removes all the filters.
Yeah.
and
that was part of why when I drank at my heaviest, that was the reason. One of the reasons was because I used to hang out with guys and we would go to parties and stuff or bars and whatever. And there were a lot of girls there, and I'm super shy and nervous because of my anxieties and all this. And, I get 2 or 3 drinks in me, and those anxieties drop. And it's why I used to say a lot that it's like, I wish I could just be who I am after about like 2 to 3 drinks all the time, because I don't have as much of a problem starting conversations, and I have more confidence, and there's all those or it's not that I have more confidence. I have less anxiety there. If that makes sense, there's a difference in the two. It's not that I gain any confidence with alcohol. It's just that my anxiety drops. So it seems like I have more confidence, but I got to a point to where it was like the people I was hanging out with, it was like, it always started with, let's get drunk or let's drink. And eventually I was like, my body feels horrible all the time because I'm drinking heavy every night. And and that's when I went the other way for, I think it was about a year or 2. I barely had anything to drink. And, and then I've ebbed and flowed. Like there's times where I've had quite a bit and whatever, but it's like for the most part now, especially now, I am not looking to get drunk. I am not looking to knock back 20 beers in a weekend, or a day, or, things that we used to do all the time, because I feel like the worst trash the next day, but I also, it's like, I used to use alcohol to bury things, and I don't need to anymore. I know how to cope with things now, so I don't need that crutch or that escape. Don't get me wrong, every once in a while it is nice to kind of get away from things for a little bit and get a little tipsy, but it's like, for the most part, I just realized, like you were saying, it's like nothing good came from it, really. I felt horrible the next day. It didn't really gain me anything in my life, even with that air quote confidence, it didn't make a difference, like all those kind of things. And it's like, when I start looking at that stuff, and it was like, what are you doing? Plus it's expensive. So it's just like, I hit a point now to where, like I said, after 2 or 3, it's like, yeah, I'm good. I'm fine. I was starting to worry myself, because I was drinking a lot each night with my friends. And even if we didn't hang out, I was still drinking at home by myself, because, I got to keep my, I can't think of the word for it, tolerance. I had to keep my tolerance up. basically. And when you start realizing that you're drinking by yourself just to keep your tolerance up, if you hit that point, that was essentially my kind of, I know it's not a big rock bottom, but that was like, ooh, this is low, man. Like, what are you doing? You know, that was my first wake up, I think, was that, to where I'm like, I'm just drinking to keep my tolerance up.
Well, you know, you got to stay practiced.
That's really what it was, which is so ridiculous. You know, looking back at the time, it made perfect sense, though. You know, that way when I'm hanging with my friends, I can knock 15 beers back or 20 beers back, and hey, whatever. You know, I can keep up with everybody. And now I don't care if I keep up with everybody. I just don't care. It's not worth it anymore. Never was, but it's especially not worth it now.
Yeah, so I don't know where this all goes, but it really just kind of clarified some things for me, and it's kind of funny how, like, it actually it did what I think they were looking for LSD to do with alcoholics.
Yeah.
Is it offered me an opportunity to have a moment of clarity and to see things without having a bottom, so to speak.
Right.
Kind of like, just to have, like, there was just this sudden clarity of like, oh yeah, that doesn't, like, it amplified what needed to be amplified, you know, versus which is actually my more like a subconscious thought level, which was fascinating to me. And like I said, as kind of a bummer as it was exactly what I needed. Like,
right.
Exactly what I needed, because it just kind of made me, anything that makes me or allows me to be more honest with myself and where I am in this moment, it helps me, because everything about alcoholism for me was running away from that.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, totally.
Not wanting to be honest with myself. It was living in the moment without a care for the effects of it. It was, you know, it like I said, it was all everything was for the wrong reasons.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was quite the thing. And, you know, I don't know where this leads me as far as how I consider my sobriety and stuff. Like right now, I'm just like, you know, I just know that I haven't had a drink since 2007, and I want to live my life in not from a self-centered standpoint, and to try to be more other-centered. Yeah. And I feel like lately I've been on the leaning towards self-centered, and you know, the ego's been picking up a little too much, and I'd like to check that, and kind of get that back into a balance. Mm-hmm. And so it's been a interesting few weeks, I have to say.
Yeah, it sounds like it. That must be tough, because it is interesting, because I know in the past, like when you've kind of felt similarly and you've brought it up, usually like getting back to your group was kind of the check for it. You know, like you would always be like, I can do that, and then I'm being of service to others in that regard. But if in doing
kind of
so,
not interested in that.
Yeah, that's what I was just gonna say.
I
don't want. Yeah, it's like it, and that's no criticism. You know, it's just, but it's like, if you're not getting anything out of it, it doesn't. You know, it's like they always talk about with depressed people. They tell you to volunteer because it's hard to feel bad when you're doing good, right?
Yep.
But if you don't feel good from what you're doing, it doesn't. You know, you're still helping someone else potentially, but also, are you? Because you might kind of only put in half effort, or you know, you might kind of check out, you know, while someone's talking, and you don't want to be rude or condescending or any of that stuff to anybody, you know, even inadvertently. So that's very interesting, because like I said, in the past, I know that was kind of how.
Yeah.
You know, because I would ask you, be like, hey, when's the last time you went to your group? Because a lot of times you would start saying certain things, and it was like, oh, I haven't done this in a while. And then you do that, and then it was like, oh, okay, this kind of checks that. So that's interesting.
Yeah, for me, it's really more about getting back onto doing meditation and doing doing more work that is going to help me become centered again from the recovery standpoint of it.
Mm.
You know, I mean, every day I go to work, I can be of service. You know, like there's
true.
aspects of service. Your
job literally is being of service. I mean, it really is. Yeah.
And I can do it with the right attitude, and that's what I really want to do. I want to do it with the right attitude, and that's been my whole thing. Has always been the work doesn't happen inside of a freaking meeting anywhere. The work happens out in the real world.
Yeah, my
for
therapist has said the same thing. You know, where it's like the work doesn't happen in here. The work happens when you take things from here out into the real world, and now you have to apply them in real time, all those kind of things, you know, and it's totally true. It's why I've talked with people and they'll, therapy doesn't work. I'm like, are you doing the work though?
Yeah, exactly.
Because therapy is more of the, like, it's like, you know, you do your homework at home and then you go in and give it to your teacher, basically. That's kind of what therapy is similar to, is, you know, you go do the work, then you come in and you tell them, and then they help you kind of, you know, maybe adjust or find what else you might need to do, type of a thing. It's not about them. You don't just sit in there and then they go, oh, here's how to fix your life. You know, that isn't quite how it, well, not my experience anyway. And the others that I've talked with, that's not seemingly how it works. I don't know any therapist that just, you know, solves problems immediately. So if so, please give me their number. But yeah, it's interesting that, you know, you kind of feel like you need to, it's such a weird thing to hear, that you feel like you've been more self-centered, yet you feel like you need to essentially center on yourself. Well, right. It makes sense, but it's funny when you look at the wording, you know?
So I already told you I'm listening to Rick Rubin's book.
Yes.
He said that exact same thing today in the chapter I was listening to.
Really?
Yeah. He was talking about the idea of focusing on oneself so you're less focused on yourself. And he says, I know it sounds weird. It's a strange paradox, but it actually makes sense.
There you
right?
go.
Because he was talking about the meditation and how it works and all that. Yeah. And by the way, that I just want to recommend for anybody that wants to find every way that you could possibly inspire yourself to do more art. And even, it doesn't matter what it, Rick Rubin starts at that we're all artists.
Yep.
Because all human beings create.
Yep.
And if you create something, you're an artist.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter whether it's a meal or it's, you know, it's something you do for your work. It's written, it's audio, whatever it is. And of course, you know, he goes a lot into music because that's his main career area. But he also ties it into other types of art. And he basically comes up, like, so far, I don't know how far I'm in the book, but it's pretty much been every way that you cannot have an excuse. Like, it is like, it's every suggestion possible, every way that you could. There are multiple ways that you can come out of ruts, multiple ways that you can shake things up, multiple ways that you can step away and come back.
Yeah.
Just he hits every single one. And one of my favorites is when he just says, or you can just walk away.
Yeah. I love on some of the Broken Record stuff when he's talking with somebody and they'll talk about how an album took X amount of years, and he'll go, you know, the music's done when the music's done.
It's done.
And I remember, like, there's this massive silverware drawing that I did when I was in high school, and it took me the better part of 6 months. And I worked on it almost every day. But there were days where I would go in and I had no inspiration. I just didn't really, you know, because, you know, you hit a point to where basically you're just layering and layering and layering. You know, you're just doing the middle work. You know, it's not the flashy stuff. It's not the finish work. It's just that, okay, I got to put another layer of black over this, you know, kind of thing. And it's hard to get inspired for that when you're in 3 months in on something, you know, or 4 months in or whatever. And there were days that my art teacher would just be like, well, why don't you do this today instead? And I'm like, well, I got to get that done. And he's like, says who?
Yeah.
Because it wasn't for an assignment. It was just, that's what I was doing at the time. And he goes, says who? He's like, let's do this today. And then I draw something else. And it was totally unrelated. And I was like, this is exactly what I needed, because I'm so burnt out on this. I need to essentially get back to, hey, you love to draw, but don't, the other is work, right? Like at that point, it's work. Let's come over here and let's have some fun.
Yep.
Now tomorrow I come in, or a couple days later, whatever it was, and now I'm like, okay, let's get some more done on this type of a thing. And it's sometimes you need that creative recharge. And it's like, I've known that was, I think, the first time in my life that I ever really thought about the fact that artists don't just work on one thing a lot of times. They'll work on multiple things so they can kind of jump around. And like, if you ever watched anybody in like a Twitch stream or something, like a comic book artist, and you watch them draw, they don't draw like top to bottom, left to right. A lot of times they'll draw certain ways, they'll do certain stuff, then they'll come over here, like they'll draw the nose, and they'll come over here, work on the ear for a little bit. Okay, I'm going to do the neck now. I'm going to go back up into the hair. And it's like, you kind of do what you feel at the time. You don't have to start at the top of the head and work down, you know, and you by jumping around, you can, you know, all right, I worked on this for a little bit, I'm going to come over here, because that variation keeps it interesting, basically. I'm sure you understand that, because I'm sure music can be very much the same way. You don't always have to work on this part of the song. You can jump over here, or I'm going to do my drum fill today, or I'm going to whatever. And, you know, it's very interesting. That's why I bought his book, because when I heard what it was about, I was like, oh, I bet I'm going to love this book. Because I like him, for the most part, his take on this kind of stuff anyway. You know, like talking with, I remember on the Chili Peppers one, him talking about how they had already written a ton of songs, and he was like, keep writing. Because you never know when that last song you write is the song, you know. And that took me back to my college days, to where, you know, we'd have to do a bunch of thumbnail sketches. And I remember one time we had to turn in 100. I was just telling my mom this story the other day. I had to turn in 100 thumbnails, and by the end of it, you're done, you know, like, and I turned them in, and the teacher was like, yeah, about 30 of these you put effort into. She's like, the other 70, she goes, you half-assed. So I had to then go do 70 more. And what she was trying to teach me is to, even like you were saying, step away, do some other stuff, come back. Because basically what was happening is I was getting to a point to where I'd draw a box with an X in it. And then the next one I'd go, okay, here's a box with a triangle in it. Here's a box with a circle. It's like, these are not new ideas, really. They are, but they're not. You know, it's like, you're not really changing much here. Like, let's see if you can put in a little more. It's like, you know, if you draw, your teacher says draw 5 people, and you just put different facial hair on the same person. It's like, you know, like you're meeting the bare minimum here, but you're not really trying. And in the regard, you know, like in the professional world, it's like you're kind of stealing from your client here, and you're not giving full effort, you know. So that's why I said I really liked with his stuff, and I very much liked the idea of like him telling musicians, if you like it, it's good. That's it. From there, if other people like it, cool. I mean, obviously with bands, you want other people like, because you want them to buy albums and see you on tour and all that, but you know, yeah.
But he sounds like that's the primary thing. You have to like it.
Yeah.
If you don't like it, then what's the point?
Right. Exactly.
It goes
Same
into
with
the whole
anything,
idea
man.
of writing for pop, you know, writing with audience in mind, writing so that you don't lose audience members. And
right.
I mean, he hits all of it. It's amazing.
I need to dig into that, but I have the actual book. I need to start reading it. So it's sitting in my bedroom. I just need to force myself to read it. But
I honestly think I'm going to read it or listen to it a second time and then take notes.
Yeah.
On things that really seemed relevant. Right now, I'm just kind of taking it all in.
Right. All right. Yeah, I'll put a link in the show notes for his book.
Yeah, it's great.
So that anyone wants to read it. And again, I you know, if you're into music and stuff, I love listening to him more than anybody on the Broken Record podcast. And I know he has his own podcast. I have not listened to any of the episodes of that yet, because I think all the episodes are like 18 hours long. Because, you know, I think they dive into some, you know, longer. I don't know. I'm just kidding. I think the first episode or so, like some of them are like over 3 hours.
Wow.
So, yeah. Which doesn't surprise me, because I feel like on Broken Record, there's some of those that I kind of wished were longer, you know, that he digs into. And I think maybe that's why he started his own, was so he could dig into that. But I'm curious. I want to listen to some of them because I'm curious if he digs into the creative process, because I don't think that one's just musicians. I think it's just people he knows and wants to talk with. But anyway, yeah. So good stuff. That's why, you know, the main reason I bought his book was I was really hoping that maybe something in that might kind of light a fire in me, or kind of jumpstart, or maybe be kind of help, you know, the key to unlocking the wall that I have in front of me creatively, you know. So we'll see. Maybe I need to get the audio book instead.
Yeah, I don't know. It's odd how just general it is, but it's also, I think, that way for a reason, because it allows if anyone can find one small nugget in there, it's worth it, because that's what he talks about. It's all about planting seeds.
Yeah.
You just plant a seed and you nurture it and you see what comes of it.
Right. It makes sense, though. Think about how many times in life, like, the most simple thing ends up being super profound. You know,
yeah.
It's very interesting how many times we're just like, no, it can't be that simple. And then you're like, oh, actually, it kind of is that simple. Like, humans tend to overthink and add extra things to things, but a lot of things are no more complicated than, you know, chop wood, carry water.
Yeah, and that's he's bringing in his spiritual philosophy into all of this.
Yeah, of course.
Because it really is that simple, and it really is about, like, nothing is permanent. Everything's temporary. It's all a path on a journey. Mm-hmm. It's, you know, and he really goes into also about completing things. Like, there's a whole chapter on that. And the people that, you know, the two different types of people, the creative that can get stuck in something forever, and the one that just puts something out and just completes it automatically. And yet they can both benefit each other by using aspects of it. And I just thought it was really, it's just an analysis of creativity.
Yeah.
But ultimately in there is that the kind of spirit of, do what makes you happy.
Yeah.
Like, he had an artist that just said, you know, I don't know if I want to do this anymore. And he said, all right, go ahead. Stop.
Then don't. Yeah.
Then don't. And
like,
she came back and said,
if it doesn't make you happy, what are you doing? Yeah.
And she came back and said, you know what? I'd rather be unhappy doing this than unhappy not doing it.
That's also fair. You know, there is a freedom in being creative, even if it isn't exactly what you want to do. You know, there's a lot of people that are adjacent to what they really want to do, but it's like, this puts me close enough that I can be happy enough doing this, or content rather than happy. I can be content. You know, there's a lot of, like, I remember reading about, like, inkers and in comic books that they wanted to be pencilers. You know, they wanted to be the ones drawing the stuff, but maybe their skills just weren't quite there, or they just couldn't crack through, but they would keep getting jobs inking. And it's like, well, I get to be creative here, because, you know, inkers get to add an element to the book. You know, they don't just trace, you know, contrary to what Chasing Amy will tell you, they're not just tracers. You know, they do add their own things to books. And as a result, you know, you are still contributing to a comic book. You may not be the big star of the comic, the writer, the artist, but you're still an integral piece of what's going on, or a letterer, or anything like that. You know, you can still, that was where my headspace was, like, in high school and college, to where I'm like, I'm probably never going to be like a comic book artist, but if I'm in graphic design, maybe I can design logos and typefaces and all these kind of things for comics. And then you're still part of the process. you know, even if you're not, like I said, the writer, the artist, but I'm adjacent, you know, like I still,
Yes.
hey, what I did is on the cover of Wolverine or whatever, you know, like there's only a few people who can say that, you know, it's me, the inker, the colorist, and the, you know, penciler, basically, you know,
Yep.
so. And I've had a talk actually from Source Point Press. Oh shoot, I forgot his name. One of the guys that was their graphic design guy, and he actually had a similar line of thinking to where he wanted to be an artist or, you know, draw the books, but his way in was through doing logo design. You know, and now his work is on the cover of a bunch of books. Ultimately, your goal got accomplished. It just might not be that you draw Wolverine, but you drew or designed the typeface that, you know, the logo. So, you know, sometimes you can get really close to where you're trying to get. And again, you can be content because you're still in the world. You know, it might not be ideal, but you can get close enough to where it's like, you know what, I'm making a good living. I'm still getting to put my work on, you know, being a session musician, right? I mean, yeah, you'd rather be the big star in the band, but there's a lot of session musicians that are highly regarded by the actual industry that, you know, you're going to get a phone call if they need this or this because you're that guy or woman, you know, that's what you're known for. So, you know, or a background, you know, even the backup singers, you know, some of them, it's like they're so good at what they do, they get work with multiple artists because they're very good, you know. So, you know, I think there's an element of that to it as well, you know, that just because you can't get exactly what you wanted, sometimes, you know, just shifting your perspective a little bit, you know, you, like I said, we've talked on here countless times about, especially if you go back, I don't know, 100 years or whenever we did the Happy-ish episode, you know, from that TV show about, like, you know, looking for contentment rather than happiness, because happiness is fleeting, you know. So yeah, good stuff though. Yeah, I can't. That's the thing. It sucks so much because, again, it's another one of my stupid, well, not stupid, I don't want to be that hard on myself, but it's another one of my blocks is it's like, why can't I just crack a book open and read it? Why can't I start a new video game? It's like, this is so hard for me and I can't figure out why. Like, you can't fail reading a book. You know, like, I mean, you could not complete reading the book, I guess, but you know what I mean? If it takes me 3 years to read the book, so what? You know, that's my pace, whatever it is. It's like, you know, video games I can at least see because, you know, they can get frustrating and blah, blah, you know, but it's like, it's reading a book. Even if I have to go back and reread stuff. Okay, you know, go back and reread stuff. Like, this isn't in school where you have to get it read and do a book report within a week or something, you know, like, you know, how many TV shows have I talked about starting and it's like a year or two later and then I'm like, oh yeah, I finally finished whatever series, and I don't beat myself up over that. It's no different. But I don't know why. I don't know. It's like I hold books in this high regard that no other media seems to fall in. I cannot figure out why. And honestly, when I try to put thought into it, it just becomes frustrating because I can't figure out what the root cause or any of that is. So it's just like, I think what I need to do is just find that, you know, like you talked a long time ago about getting on the treadmill, even if it's for 5 minutes.
Yeah.
You know, and if it happens to be 40 minutes, you're on it, cool. But if it's only 5 minutes, also cool. Because I did it. I got on it. And maybe, you know, that's maybe I need to shift that to how I look at books. Like, even if I only read 5 pages, fine. If I read 100 pages, also fine, you know, but neither is better than the other, you know? So I don't know. Anybody listening has any suggestions for this kind of stuff? Any of these blocks I talk about, if you have any suggestions, I am all ears. Because I would love to crack some of these. Because, you know, like, I keep looking at, like, going back to school, right? And there's so many things that I'm like, ugh, about that. But but one of them is, you know, like, because I keep thinking about, you know, graphic design and whatever. And I'm just like, I can't sit down and do anything, you know? So if it's like, it seems silly to sign up for school and then go into it to where I can't seem to sit down and even just kind of casually sketch right now, you know? But also, how much of that's my excuse to not do something?
Yeah.
right? You know, it's like
And if you
know,
were signed up, maybe you'd then sit down and sketch.
right? You don't know. Yeah, and that's the thing. And there's really only one way to find out, which would be just to sign up. And my therapist brought that up. She's like, why don't you just sign up? She goes, worst case scenario, you drop back out. And she's like, you're basically right back where you are, because like where I live, school is free. So it's not like I would have to take on a bunch of student loans for it. So it is essentially risk-free. There's still going to be art supply costs, right? But aside from that, I'm not going to have tuition costs, you know? So, and I was like, she's got a point there. It's like, dang it, I hate it when they're right about stuff like that.
Well, they're well paid.
I hope so. I hope they are. For the caseload that I know, like mine has, I hope they're well paid. Because boy, do they load them up. Anyway, yeah, good talk though. Well, I hope you get a chance to kind of figure out what this means going forward for you, because that also can be really frustrating, where you kind of are like, this needs to change or this or that, and then you're just like, I don't know what to do though. Like I'm just here right now. So
that's what's cool about it. Is that
it is. It can be. Yeah.
I'm totally comfortable in that. I'm like, you know what? I learned something, and it's going to be little steps. Like I had some hangups with work of what I do on Sundays. I corrected those today. That's it.
Right. Okay.
Right?
No.
It's that simple, right?
Yeah.
Right? Like I can't, there's no point in, all right, there's Monday stuff that has to happen, but it's not Monday, it's Sunday.
That's right.
So what was my hang up on Sunday? All right, well, let's change that today.
Yeah. You know, and it's funny because, again, we talk about simple and not overthinking it, right? Overthinking it would be you trying to take on Monday and Tuesday stuff also.
Oh,
and
yeah.
It's like,
also.
it's not Monday and Tuesday.
Nope. Exactly.
That stuff, leave that for Monday.
For Mondays, Monday and Tuesday and Tuesday. It's that easy.
Yeah. And it sounds like, oh, yeah, okay. But the thing is, I think a lot of us have been taught so much that we have to take on so much more that we don't understand that things really are that simple, but we load and load and load, you know, because that's kind of how society's teaching people right now, is that like from that minute you wake up to the minute before you fall asleep, you got to be doing something productive. And it's just not true. You know, you think about 20 years ago, it wasn't like that. You know, people used to have more free time.
It's the real world example of chop wood, carry water.
It is.
That's all it is.
Yeah.
It's okay. What do I do today? All right, I'm going to do it.
Yep.
Okay. What about tomorrow? Nope, it's not tomorrow. Don't worry about tomorrow.
Yeah.
When tomorrow comes, we will worry about tomorrow.
Right. I mean, not to be a Debbie Downer, but it's like, you may not wake up tomorrow. So why worry about it? You know, like it's just worry about what's in front of you. It really is. And, you know, like in therapy, you hear just worry about what you can, affect.
Yeah.
And that's it. You can't affect what you're doing. Yeah. So, yeah. Well, good luck with that. I hope we both have. So I assume that's your win, right? I mean, because that's kind of profound. So, or do you have something that's more of a win than that? Or a different win, not more?
My win was the meeting at work and coming up with a solution that was positive, not only for myself or, allowed it gives somebody an opportunity without having to tear them down. And it made life easy for everybody. And it came down to just basic communication and looking for positive solutions. And so that was definitely the win. Yeah.
That makes sense, because that really could have devolved into just petty bickering. It really could have.
Oh,
100%, right? Yeah.
And then somebody having to tell others what to do. And it's like, no, we just, don't worry, we got this. Yeah. I mean, that's the whole point. Like that's my whole point. I don't know what the problem is, because I really didn't know what the problem is. This can all be worked out. And so that's the win.
Well, also, when you communicate with others, it's amazing how things can get accomplished in a civilized manner. Wow. Crazy, right?
Shocking.
I mean, it kind of is. Again, something so simple can be so profound. Hey, when you talk to somebody and don't treat them like a jerk.
Yeah, and my intention is to continue this idea of like, I think a lot of my self-centered thinking manifests itself in digging my heels in on things, or having the same reaction as I've always had. And that I think is actually my tangible thing that I can do different this week is if something comes up where I would ordinarily have this reaction, I'm going to do the opposite and have a new reaction. That's my goal. No more.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. If whatever it is that I've rolled my eyes at, I'm not going to roll my eyes at it.
Right. Well, you're right. Cause that does not show growth.
No.
It shows stubbornness, and
right?
it really doesn't. So the other, at least the other shows an attempt at, whether it ends up being growth is another story, but at least it shows an attempt at, okay, I'm going to try not to be a jerk and just roll my eyes.
Yeah. Or have some lame comment or whatever it is.
Yeah. Under your breath, like, okay.
Yeah, whatever.
What was that, Hanno? Oh, nothing.
Yeah.
I said, well, I can't wait to have a hot dog for lunch. Unless somebody stole it.
I'm on burritos this week, dude.
Oh, burritos? Okay.
Yeah,
I was just doing
last week.
I was just doing the callback to that story about the guy who was like taking hot dogs from you at lunch. That was a good 5 years ago or whatever.
God, that was funny.
Yep. Until you realize that's like, hey, maybe this guy needs it, and see, growth perspective. Yep. Oh man. So yeah, I think my win is that I've noticed that I've been getting a lot better about catching things in the moment. Instead of, oh, that's what that was. Now, depression still gets you, because depression, most of the time you don't realize you're really in the thick of it until you're out of it, kind of thing. But with that one, I like with the comfort circle or whatever, like really noticing how I'm feeling about that and stuff, like catching that while it's happening, I think is really a big growth thing for me, because it really does help, just like anything, if it's going to cause you anxiety, you can kind of prepare in ahead of time / in the moment a little bit, work on your breathing and touch grass if you have to, those kind of things. You can, use grounding techniques or whatever. So I think it helped. The problem is that I don't really know what to do, but what it did tell me by catching it is, hey, you need to talk to someone about this. Yeah. Like this is above your pay grade. You need some help here. So, and that's what we talked about a little bit there. She told me some things to try to work on. And then when I go see her again, we'll kind of see how I'm feeling then. So yeah, there you go. All right. I was thinking about doing something. I don't know what kind of response we'll get, but like on Salty Language, you do like the question of the week. I was thinking, like, especially when we know we're going to record, is maybe throwing out on our Twitter, like, what was your win for the week? And maybe kind of, if we find some cool ones, maybe read them on the show at the end, or
what was your win for the week?
Yeah.
Humans.
Show us what you get. Oh, wait, wrong show.
Or dogs.
Or dogs.
Maybe, if we have dogs listening, give us your win.
Yeah. If your dog has a win for the week, let's hear it.
Yeah. Let's hear it.
We love hearing good dog stories.
Yep.
Definitely. I mean, we'll also listen to the bad ones, but we prefer the good ones. God knows we've heard enough bad ones. All right. Well, I think we got a show there. What do you think?
Yep, I think so.
All right. Well, I got to click on this thing here. If you want to reach out to us, I'm going to change this. If you want to reach out to us, you can find us on Twitter at The Crazy Life Pod, where I post when new episodes go up. But I was thinking the other day, I was like, I really should try to be a little more interactive with that, especially when we do have articles that we talk about. Maybe post those a little more or whatever. I've gotten kind of bad about that. If you want to find us on Facebook, it's facebook.com/group/Crazy Life Podcast. Maybe I'll throw the question up over there too. What was your win for the week?
Oh, that's a good idea. Yeah.
We're part of the Tangent Bound Network, which can be found at tangentboundnetwork.com. If you want to reach out to me, you can find me on Twitter, Blue Sky, Threads, Instagram at Stunami. My other podcast is Salty Language, which can be found on Twitter at salty_language, or just go to saltylanguage.com for all of our links. Like it's just me and my best friend. On the last episode, we talked about how I've been watching Shogun. I watched a terribly glorious movie called Munchies. WWE Most Wanted Treasures. We talked about the horrible Dwayne Wade statue head. We talked about Halloween a little bit, the holiday, not the movie. But so if you're into any of that, give us a listen. That was our 14th Halloween episode.
Wow.
Which is really hard to fathom, but also totally believable, But man, that's nuts. But I did realize we totally did not even reference Werewolf Bar Mitzvah on there. And we do every year. Yeah, we both forgot about it.
How do you forget that?
I don't know, but for anyone listening, if you don't know what Werewolf Bar Mitzvah was, it was on 30 Rock, and it's a glorious song by Tracy Morgan, and I forgot the other guy who wrote it, but look it up online. It's a lot of, it's a really stupid thing, but it's fun. So yeah, there you go. Henno, how about you? How can they reach out to you?
Oh, you can pretty much find me by looking up my name. I think I'm Ida Henno on X, formerly known as Twitter, and I think I'm just Henno Heider on everything else, Facebook and Messenger and yada yadas.
Okay.
As I'm double checking right now, because I forget. I go.
What are you under on TikTok?
That's a good question. What am I under on TikTok?
Yeah. See, I don't have a TikTok.
Yeah, I have a TikTok.
Yeah. Yeah, I have one by association because technically I'm associated with the Salty Language one, but I never use it. That's all Tony. So, because I just don't want any more social media.
Oh, here we go. This one is actually I'm kind of hidden.
Oh, okay.
Because it's my middle name and my mother's maiden name.
Oh wow, that's
how funny is that?
Yeah, all right.
I don't know why I did that. I maybe I just wanted to have. Maybe I started one with my name and then I switched to another. Oh. Actually, if my actual name is my at is my middle name and my mom's maiden name, but my title name is Hen apostrophe no.
And no either.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah, all right.
That's great. Yeah. Otherwise, I'm either Henno or just Slimo on pretty much everything.
Yeah,
that's funny. Except X, which is Ida Henno. Go figure. Yeah.
Yeah. I've got your link to that in the show notes, but yeah. So all right.
Funny. There you have it.
So yeah, if you need help, please reach out. And please reach out to your friends that are going through a rough go, but also check on the other ones just to make sure they're okay, because a lot of us mask really well and maybe you're doing better than people think. And then of course, please be kind when you can, especially for those listening this upcoming Tuesday with the election stuff, is please be kind to one another and realize that regardless of who wins, we still all have to deal with everything together. And please, quit being so hateful to one another. It's just not worth it. And it makes us all weaker as a group, man. So, all right. You got anything else, or you want to go ahead and take us out of here, sir?
Yeah, I got our quote is, "You are the maker of your own pizza. If you don't like where this pizza is going, it's okay to start a new one."